Welcome everyone to yet another event on a controversial issue organized by SETA Foundation. We have today with us, my name is Kadir Ustun, I'm the research director here at SETA DC. We have Dilek Cindoglu and Merve Kavakci Islam today with us to discuss Headscarf ban and labor discrimination in Turkey. We hosted Professor Cindoglu before during the Inside Turkey conference. She gave us a little bit of a taste of the research she did, and her report just was published in English, so we wanted to take the opportunity to expand that discussion we had briefly during our annual conference for Inside Turkey. As you all very well know, Headscarf issue has been discussed and debated predominantly around as a political issue, but Professor Cindoglu's research goes a little deeper and looks at the economic and social aspects of that issue as well, and try to understand how this ban impacts the women's status in Turkey, women's access to their opportunities to develop their careers. And we have our distinguished Professor Merve Kavakci Islam with us as the discussant for today's event. Neither of our speakers really need a big introduction, but I'll briefly try to summarize their background. Professor Cindoglu is currently a visiting senior scholar at the International Research on Women and Gender Studies at Columbia University. And she's an associate professor of sociology at the Department of Political Science at Bilkent University in Ankara. She received various awards from different organizations. I won't go into the details. You can read that in the handouts. But her report, which was published by TESEF recently, is titled Headscarf Ban and Discrimination, Professional Headscarf Women in the Labor Market. By the way, I'd like to thank also to TESEF for sending us those reports and accommodating our request for that. We are quite appreciative of that. And you can, I think we still have some, you can get copies of the report. Professor Merve Kavakci Islam is a lecturer of international relations at George Washington University. She, as many of you know, she was elected to the Turkish parliament back in 1999. However, she could not serve in the parliament because of her coverage, headscarf. And she has many. She's quite active in the area of human rights and women's empowerment, and she has received many awards for that and for those activities as well. She's currently a consultant for U.S. Congress on the Muslim world and a columnist for Turkish daily Yeni Akit newspaper. She recently, her most recent book is titled Headscarf Politics in Turkey, a Post-Colonial Reading. Among other books, this particular one, we would like to talk about that book further with her, but we have to figure out the logistics. But I would like to thank both Professor Cindoglu and Merve Kavakci today for joining us for this discussion. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm going to continue with thank yous. This research wouldn't have been possible if TESEP didn't initiate it to sponsor the research. Although the idea was mine, I have already conducted research on the discrimination, women's gender discrimination in the labor market, in different segments of the labor market. But it was their initiation that brought everything together. And again, if that research wouldn't have been possible if many NGOs, including SETA Ankara, wouldn't have volunteered to recruit their members or to mobilize their networks to bring the participants so that I can have focus groups and group discussions and in-depth interviews. As an outsider, as you can imagine, my task was not an easy task. So therefore, I'm gonna scream. No, I'm gonna scream. That's fine. So, of course, the major thanks go to women who shared, and men, for that matter, who shared their experiences with me in an extremely frank manner, even though, as I've said earlier, I'm not an insider and I've conducted this research as an outsider. And this journey started with, as I've said again, TESEV's workshop, where TESEV was the Turkish NGO on particularly working under human rights issues. They were picking up this issue as a women's labor market experience issue, as a human rights issue. So that's why their interest was coming from. And my interest was coming from being a sociologist, a feminist sociologist in Turkey. I have been witnessing with, along with many scholars, that women's labor market participation in general has been dropping to 22% from 30%. So I had that academic research question, and they had that policy-oriented question, so therefore our roads have crossed, and this is how this research come about. The research question that I dealt with is basically looking at that how is that the headscarf ban in Turkey is affecting professional headscarf women's access and their promotions in the labor market. Probably this audience doesn't need further explanation about the headscarf ban in Turkey. It has been in effect since 1960s, but more effectively since 1980s. Basically, it has been basically both the media and the political groups were vocal about the headscarf women access to education, particularly to higher education. And there's also some research on women's access to politics, but there isn't much research on the impact of headscarf ban on the labor market. So to me, that ignorance of the academic work, academia, was also very interesting in a very twisted way. We, the academics, didn't pay much attention on that possible impact. But I don't want to raise your hopes about the content, about the extent of my research. This is a qualitative research. This is not a quantitative research. So I cannot talk about how much the headscarf ban is influencing the labor market discrimination or labor market participation of women, but I will be telling you the ways in which how the headscarf ban had an impact on the labor market processes, gendered labor market processes, and its possible impact. For the other question, we need to conduct a larger research with the representative data or the existing state statistical institutes questionnaires should include a question regarding to headscarf, so that we'll be able to make some regressions from that data. But at the moment, we don't have any. As I've summarized earlier, headscarf ban has been in effect in higher education institutions since 1960s. It peaked in 1980s and 1990s. And basically it had an influence on, primarily the influence was on the educational institutions, rather they be state universities or private foundation universities, but we haven't looked at the workplace. What we know about the workplace is that the women who have been who have already enrolled to public sector, who already got jobs in public sector before 1980 or before the February 28, then there were some women, again we don't know about the numbers, around like maybe 5,000, 6,000 women, who were working as teachers in the primary schools or high schools, who were wearing headscarf, and with the implication of the ban in the public sector, they were dismissed of, in various processes. They were first warned, etc., but in the end they were dismissed of the labor market. So the public sector, in other words, what is going on in the public sector, in the state jobs, they already somehow know. It's not really easy or possible for headscarf women to work in the public sector jobs. But then question comes, well, what about the private sector jobs? There is no ban in private sector jobs. If you have a company, then as an employee, there is no rule, or as an employer, there is no rule for you to impose on your workers. And as a matter of fact, women have been working in the blue-collar jobs as workers, and they have been covering their hair. So what's new actually is professional women. What is happening to professional women, and that was my inquiry. Again, you know, if when you put things into perspective, when you look at in terms of the proportion, I'm looking at a very small proportion of the society. Like in any society, professional women makes very small percentage of the larger population. But what's critical about the Turkish case is that when you look at the labor market participation, traditionally we have women working in primary school educations and high school educated women participate to the labor market around like 10s and 20%. Okay, so the except the agricultural work. So that the uneducated or lesser educated women have been participating in a very low levels. However, since the 1980s, women with professional jobs have been participating to the labor force around 80%. So we are looking at the segment of population which has a traditionally which has a higher expectation of labor market participation. And that has dropped 10% in the last 30 years, from 1988 till 2006. So, so that drop is something to be worried about or to be able to raise some questions about. This is the population that I am talking about. But again, this is not a quantitative research, so therefore, in no way I'm making a direct inferences. So we cannot, like, draw the arrows like we can draw in quantitative research. Even then, we can only talk about regressions. So, what have I found is that this is the population that I was looking at, and I was interested in the labor market experiences of the headscarf women. So, therefore, I've designed a research where I can spoke with women who are married and women, single women. They are all headscarf women. Headscarf women married, headscarf women single, headscarf women who graduated before the coup or after the coup, and also I looked at a small group of husbands and their attitudes about their professional wives' work. And I've repeated those focus groups and interviews in 3 different cities, Istanbul, Ankara, and Konya. And I've used